Okay, I'm going to kick off. I have a lot of material today. Welcome everyone to Web3 Wednesdays at Consensus. I do this as a monthly AI session, and today I'm going to be covering some predictions around 2024, go through some of the things that happened over the break. I hope everyone had a great break, and let's get started. For those who don't know, I'm Clemens Wan. I'm a solution architect and lead AI evangelist within Consensus, do a lot of different work with decentralized infrastructure network and Infura, and just a passionate AI user. Let's get started. I have completed the bootstrapping Web3 with AI course. It's awaiting sign off. I'm hopefully going to be able to post that on Udemy and be able to charge a little bit for it to put this together to help different I guess innovation leads or like passionate subject matter experts to dive deep into it and also become an AI lead for their company, or at least think about the policies that they can create. So hopefully that's useful for other people, and I will share that next month when it's available, and you can expense it, right, Eric? So again, today, this will be for helping upskill your Web3 contributors, the latest trends that I've seen, how to experiment with AI. This is made with Crea. For those who haven't seen it, Crea.ai has, you could sign up for it and you can create these negative images. So you can submit your logo and type in the prompt and it'll create an image for it. And it's pretty fun. Experimented with it over the summer, over the break. The first thing that I usually like to bring up for the intro is that within Consensus, we do have different internal facing and public facing initiatives that we've created. We have a full internal AI team that's under our Octo, so our Office of the CTO. And the things that we've done, and this is just at a very high level, we started off with policies, making sure that legal and data privacy and security was involved. We started with a decentralized approach, meaning we have this hashtag applied AI channel that anybody can join and talk about. We also started with the Azure OpenAI Playground and ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot for different parties, but eventually we created our own internal chat model off of open source tools, and we launched that. We have little mini hackathons here and again, but the main one that we did was in May 2023. The easiest way to have that hackathon was to include a section around AI awards, and I thought that was pretty meaningful and taught people how to leverage AI for creating presentations and kind of the overhead that you might have and focus on building rather than creating the pitch. And then we also had a 10-week AI takeover sprint, and that was really rewarding. It was a lot of training sessions. We had different topics for every week and assignments for the users. So employees would be able to practice prompting, practice image generation, video generation, different types of writing. And today we have this group that is mostly focused on reviewing different third-party tools and seeing whether or not there's any type of shadow IT inside of the organization that's using tools without permission, but mostly to make sure that our company is safe. In terms of public-facing tools, we have already used a lot of this for marketing and content. It's mostly used in this format of 10-80-10, which is the first 10% is you. You come up with the idea, you come up with different insights. The 80% could be your team or could be replaced by AI in some way, shape, or form to give you a draft, to give you multiple opinions, to give you some brainstorming. And then the last 10% is, again, you to make sure that you're not just blatantly copying or you're adding in the flair that you need. But hopefully that improves your progress and it builds different types of material that's useful for your existing strategies. And in terms of general customer support, we have used live peer and different types of services, and we're looking for different ways to onboard different bots that learn our information. We haven't seen it yet that it is a super useful tool. It seems to be more of a gimmick, but we're going to get to a point where the developer process and experiences changes towards that. In terms of what we've been exploring that's more external facing, we've looked at how this can reduce internal meeting times for different summaries. We've looked at thinking about this MetaMask Snaps type of GPT, maybe the impact of user experience, so less on FAQs, more on building off of those tools. For those who don't know, these are all recorded. There's a YouTube playlist back to September where they've been publicly available. These Web3 Wednesdays are available for anyone, and we will be uploading it to the Consensus YouTube channel, which is linked here. And I also link the slides directly, so you can have the slides. So first, 15-minute is a recap of AI insights. First thing is generative AI. What's the difference between that and regular kind of AI that's been around for quite a long time? The things that we've seen AI have been used for before generative AI as a foundational model is called supervised learning, meaning you just have a lot of inputs with outputs and you create some type of filter or understanding of those smaller data sets. So for example, if you have email and you see that some emails are spam, then based on the data, which may not just be in a series of different attributes or formats that you can see, can indicate whether or not that is spam. And so you can create a spam filter from that. In terms of ads, same thing. If it's click-through rates, those are also then marked as effective ads and have different types of tracking on it. And things can apply to image and different types of routes for optimization as well. In terms of generative AI, I think the difference here, there is a version of this which is more prompt-based and more linguistic-based, but basically it is a understanding of the English language from a semantic point of view. And so all of these prompts, and there's a lot of really fun, different visual, looking at how the transformers work and looking at how this kind of feedback mechanism works, but effectively you are guessing the next word, right? And you are trying to add on this positive feedback loop in order to predict what that next word means. And it just so happens that all of this together and with GPT-4, now with like 1.5 trillion parameters, it's learned quite a bit of all of the English language, and it has some level of semantic understanding, meaning it can, possibly pass the Turing test if it didn't have all of these different, guardrails involved. And so the summary here is that generative AI and the way that we've been seeing it and seeing it be used is more of a large language model, foundational model that changes our user experience. So it's more about conversations rather than about prompts and about kind of getting the right query to get a certain set of search results. And I have a slide on that later. In terms of how I've looked at this, and I've presented within Consensus since around April 2023, and the evolution of AI slide has not changed, but this is just my point of view. And I think we're well into this series of evolutions. The first one is that those who don't use the tool will fall behind because there is true work arbitrage. If you look at Fiverr, if you look at different places, there's still the same costs that are available for certain things. Not that we want, this entire marketplace to be flooded with a bunch of AI things, but there is opportunity to use AI to increase your productivity and to help the creator economy in some shape or form. I think in terms of the enterprise side, companies that don't invest in applying AI will fall behind. There's different ways that you can use this for onboarding employees, for querying different types of policies for people and talent, or for kind of your HR group. There could be other versions that you create internally, starting off as AI interns, but eventually being trained to be employees that are being asked about being a historian inside of the company. Maybe it's part of mergers and acquisitions. You have an AI bot that learns a lot of the history and is able to help with M&A in the future. I think that is part of the modules that get created. And as that involves, there was an article around there are no longer moats from Google, meaning that for me, that just means fewer moats, meaning that these different types of companies that are building these startups will be able to build it in such a way with kind of cheaper and cheaper resources. Maybe the startup itself becomes smaller and smaller and needs less money, and therefore the checks that are being written by VCs are smaller and smaller and more selective. And so it's no longer just building a prototype and being able to pitch the prototype. You actually have to show that there's some level of product market fit, and maybe the cost of making different types of software goes to zero. Maybe it's full software on demand, like any type of software that you can imagine might be interesting and could be just a tool that you can build yourself without the need for paying a SaaS overhead. And lastly, I think that there are already a bunch of AI clones and proof of creating faceless YouTube channels and those things. But I feel that if you hire me in the future, you might be hiring a version of me that's trained from myself. So my Clembot may have a fee that you can charge to speak with it. Maybe the GPT store, when that gets launched later this week, supposedly that will have something of that sort. Or maybe the companies themselves can co-train these types of clones of the company that increases the valuation because, again, it's easier for M&A, it's easier for company-wide growth. Maybe it reduces different types of meetings. Maybe it keeps track of all the JIRA tickets that are created. In terms of the use cases, I started off thinking about this as Uber for X. So for those who have been around for the past 10 years, thinking about the gig economy, effectively Uber for X is thinking about how you can turn regular workers into independent contractors, making them into gig workers. And that means that there's on demand for services, and Uber is the tech layer that takes care of your payments, takes care of that market making between the driver and the passenger, and all of that's taken care of, so you just focus on driving, right? And so the ChatGPT for X version of it is actually not just a large language model chatbot for a particular user, but it's actually the training of these AI agents and assistants on the data that's needed. And so the interface itself kind of changes quite a bit, and it leads to kind of the thinking of querying versus prompting. And the specific one here is for image creation. I use Midjourney. Midjourney has been popular, but it's very similar to querying, which is if you look for Google, you're searching for generation of outputs. So in image generation, you can type in a particular type of query and you get four different options, and then you can choose variations on top of it before you finalize your image. I've been using ChatGPT quite a bit, and ChatGPT with the DALL-E creation with kind of this multi-facet modal is pretty interesting because you start your conversation by saying, oh, I want to write a blog post. And the purpose of this image is to represent the blog post. And so maybe the prompt is written by your actual large language model instead of by you. And so you don't actually have to fiddle around with writing the perfect query to get the right image. The LLM does some of that for you. You can kind of define what it looks like. And so I think that's what we're getting into in terms of trends, and my general insight is that there will be a lot more prompting versus querying, and that means that there's more conversations around the topic towards the goal versus kind of just searching around the internet for different web resources. In terms of what I've seen as the most common AI bot marketing talking points is to train your ChatGPT on your own data. And this is already available. There's a lot of services for it. There are people building services for this. Effectively, you want to either deploy it internally or deploy it to the public. And if you deploy it internally, you want it to be fully private, fully connected to certain pieces, depending on how flexible your policies are. You want it to level up your team. You want it to be able to increase the velocity of launching features for your team. And for public, it's really more of customer support. It's more of understanding of your marketing side. It's maybe deploying into these new user experiences that you might have for developers, for creating custom queries, for creating plugins, for creating new GPT agents altogether. And how this is relevant to Web3, these are the things that I've seen so far in the past year. Really, for retail facing, you have onboarding, so chatting with your docs, that's pretty easy to do. There could be additional education tools. So if you're trying to learn Polygon, for example, they have a chatbot that teaches you and is able to hold your hand through different tutorials that they have. There can be using for first drafts, maybe writing of documentation, writing of API documentation. There could be auditing, maybe just base auditing of your debugging of code and maybe QA processes. There could be APIs that are exposed to GPTs themselves or GPT plugins themselves that might launch. Definitely a content explosion. So you can come up with a content calendar and have AI write a bunch of drafts for you or create a bunch of videos on your behalf. And then what I like to think about is, what does the GPT SEO look like? Since there's no advertising in a lot of this, how will advertising sneak their way into this type of view, right? So are people going to likely build LLMs that are influenced by advertising that suggest certain types of products? Who knows? Like most of these chatbots and LLMs are black boxes. It's hard to know what that GPT knows because it's still predicting it live, right? All of these answers are done in the same way, which is predicting the next word, predicting kind of the overall memory that's being created. And in terms of, I think company internal usage, the most promising one is DAO onboarding for me. There's a lot of DAOs out there, and the hardest thing to do is to get sustained attention for your community building. So hopefully there is a way for you to leverage this AI bot properly, and then hopefully create content creation that's engaging for people. In terms of where I see this whole thing going, you have a lot of large language models. There are big ones created by big players that have a lot of funding, and there are more independently trained ones as well. There is a trend towards creating smaller and smaller models so that they can be launched directly on your phone or can be hosted on your phone without any access to the internet. Maybe there's like a bare bones model that just understands English, and then you can download additional models for a fee or for like a training fee where you upscale your AI clone to be better at a certain type of topic. Maybe you want it to be very good at chess, so you kind of teach it chess and then it learns it. So that could be a possibility of where LLMs head towards. What we have today is kind of known dates of trained public data. So I believe GPT-4 is up to date with April 2023 data. And what's next is thinking about what does live public data look like connected to it? Is it even possible? Apparently Grok, which is launched by Twitter, has public data, and maybe it's just a summary of the latest trends, maybe just a page of it, but that is quite hard to do. In terms of private-based ones, you would have trained private data, which is static. Maybe it's your entire, Google Docs associated with your company. And then eventually there will be live private data as well, and different preferences for different employees. Maybe they want to delete their chat history and things like that. And then there will be plugins, extensions, capabilities that are APIs that you've already created that might be triggers for your AI to be able to do. And the prediction for interactive AI is thinking about personalized AI coordinating agents that act as the API layer. So basically, instead of us writing developer code and SDKs, is having the AI kind of interpret that and be able to send information between different AI agents. And maybe you would have your personal web apps and dApps that are available, and you can talk with other corporate agents. And we've already seen examples of this with AutoGen, which is multiple types of spawned AI agents talking to each other within a single piece of code. Maybe there will be other pieces of standing code where there's a conversation between these AI agents to get things done. As a quick recap, quite a bit happened with ChatGPT in the past year, and I talked about this last month, but this is always a good slide to think about. We started off with just general ChatGPT 3.5, and then eventually they added on subscriptions, they added on a playground, there was a launch of a better model, the 100 million users were launched by January, very, very fast adoption. There were apps that were launched quite quickly, then the idea of plugins. From there, game changer was code interpreter, meaning that ChatGPT could actually write Python code and execute it locally. You can upload files, you can upload multiple files, and it's able to interpret it. Then ChatGPT Enterprise launched, which is a higher tier subscription, maybe for longer term information. There was internet access that was available and then discontinued and then now available again to make sure that it didn't get behind firewalls and start writing different pieces of content that was not allowed. Then there was ChatGPT 4V, which is for vision, which I found really, really impressive. There's a whole paper on what it can do. There's also open source Whisper, which is effectively taking your voice and being able to do live transcriptions for it. The GPT store was hinted by the end of the year around GPT Builder, so you can build your own GPT agents and add on capabilities that are combined. So not just having one GPT that can only do web searches and one GPT that can only do certain API calls, but a combined capability where you can query the GPT, upload an image, ask to describe it, and then have DALL-E generate the image within the same thread. Also cheaper access all around. And so what we see coming very, very soon this month is the GPT store, maybe even this week. I'm thinking there will be some cross-thread memory. Right now, each thread instance is a fresh thread of GPT-4. And therefore, if you could do something like, hey, remember my name is Clemens, then it could probably, across your entire account, remember some long-term memory facts about you and the projects that you're working on. And I think that what you would see in kind of the general public right now is kind of a move towards these personalized AI agents. and eventually, hopefully, creation of these like AI swarms. So what that leads to is this ChatGPT store. The reason why I think it's really game changing is the first half of 2023, you had a lot of people building their own WordPress sites, right? As an analogy, meaning they were taking large language models like GPT-4 and putting on their own layers of learning for it. And so by comparison, it's like saying there's a blog operating system. I want to create a marketplace. I want to embed ads. I want to have it hosted in my own website with my own domain. What is popular today are things like Medium and Substack and Mirror, and these are all blogging platforms. And so I see the GPT Store as a GPT Store platform, meaning that you can add on things like payments and subscriptions. You can have paid users, you can have direct to readers, you can change the way that you launch your software. And it's a new distribution mechanism. You can do auto hosting, so you don't have to worry about your databases being, not large enough to support, or your scaling mechanisms for CDNs and things like that. So there's auto scaling, there's auto hosting. You can even migrate your old blog from WordPress directly to Substack or Medium. And so I assume that there's a lot of software that will be built and will be launched with the GPT Store that includes this types of hosting, as well as additional fees that add on top of it. And you know me, I like to draw a lot of diagrams. These are more boxes. What we have today are company-specific GPT AI agents that are built on private data, and different types of engineers have used LangChain to build these out. GPT Builder is kind of a simple way of doing so. So a very, very simple way of creating your own GPTs. And I have an example of this in the next slide. And I'll show my levels of GPTs that I've made and different tips and tricks for it. What will be built is this GPT store for discovering, paying, listing, deploying, auto scaling of your GPTs, which I think should be decentralized. And the things that haven't really been built yet, and there's some GPT interaction browser devices. Rabbit just launched their new tech, right, at CES, I believe was yesterday, and they're showcasing how you can interact with this operating system through voice to kind of voice responses. And I think there's also an opportunity for something like a GPT naming service. So if I wanted to reference my Clemens.gpt versus somebody else's GPT, maybe there is an opportunity to build that. So if you're interested in building these things, contact me, because I've been thinking about it quite a bit and thinking about how it can change the way we interact with these large language models. So GPTs, for those who don't know, are ways that you can build your own AI agent that's focused on different types of instructions. So this is an example of an SEO writer GPT. I took a lot of and read a lot of different articles on this, and I thought this was the best one. This is pulled from West GPT. He's a YouTube creator. And I sent him a few messages to see if I could use his material. Hopefully he says yes, but this is directly from his public material. Effectively, the GPTs that I've created are public for everyone. And this is an example of a Clem SEO writer. And what it does is it crafts SEO optimized engaging articles. And so if I start off with something like Web3, then it will go through different types of steps that I've defined. So from this view, you see that this is me, quote unquote, coding a GPT agent, is really copying instructions and saying, this is who you are, this is the context of who you are, this is your expertise of what you do, and then go through these steps with me, and then also some like anti-blocking of hacking. But effectively, it'll say the first step is to, choose a particular title. Maybe I like From Concept to Reality. How about this one, Web3? So maybe I say 4. And then just because it has read the instructions, it's able to do the next step, which is I told it to write title generation, create 5 titles, and then do an outline development, draft a 5-point outline. So it's doing that. It's creating 5-point outlines of what it can write about. And I could say, yes, that works. And it will continue on any topic, continue to write this. And it can even generate different images on top of it, whatever I ask it to do. And it'll write out all of these things live. I did this for my list of 30 writer, which I can show a demo of. And all of these links are available. I can show you the code for it, or quote unquote code is really just talking about how it works. But if you have any task, if you have to write some type of Any type of copy, you can create your own GPT agent first and then do that. So this is, saying this is the introduction set of paragraphs, and then it says, once confirmed, we'll proceed to the next section. So please proceed. You can copy this to a different writer and then edit it as necessary, make it shorter. And it can go through all of these different sections for you. One of them here is to create, a sequential content image generation. So maybe it creates a new image for everyone. So it's calling DALL-E 3 to create that image. So the first section has an image, the second section can have an image. So now it's continuing to write it. It can also write metadata. So it will take this Web3 image, continue to write the history of it, and voila, it's done. Quite a bit of advancements just with a few lines of clearly plain written text on how it looks. So feel free to play around with these agents or build your own. Another interesting one that I did, so these are some of the agents that you can try out with links to them. They're all public. They're only available for GPT Plus subscribers, but based on what's launched with the GPT store, who knows what's going to happen. Maybe you can pay my WinEsselabs.com some money for accessing them. The one that I think is super cool is this GPT prompt perfector, which means that if you wanted to build a GPT and write what to write inside of your instructions, you can use this, and this will continue to write its thing. But let me just show you this prompt perfector. So the prompt perfector itself, if you look at the GPT, the configuration, it's actually pretty easy. It just says, take your steps to prompt refinement, refine what the user is asking for, and then it gives an example. And so this is a really good way of getting your GPT to respond in the way that you want it to do is by telling it what the input is likely to be, and then give it an example of what a good output looks like. And so it has new feature suggestions for your GPT itself. It suggests conversation starters. So all the things that you would write inside of your configuration, it's already available, and you can use this for creating different things. So maybe you want to write metadata for video, and it refines a prompt for you. Well, maybe I should put stars around it. Anyway, you can edit that out. So these are the steps that you could copy and paste directly into a new GPT and be able to generate that. Cool. Feel free to play around with those. So what is GPT Builder, and where does it fit within your AI solution techniques? Effectively, the bottom part of this has very low cost to implement because you're directly calling GPT-4. And here you're doing either contextual prompt engineering, meaning you're giving enough context for it to understand and create its own persona of some sort. And then the second one is RAG. So retrieval augmented generation is still in context learning, but you're taking different pieces of content and you're creating a embedding of a vector database on that content. So you're literally trying to teach it that particular amount of information. And when you do both contextual prompt engineering and RAG, then you are ineffectively building a knowledge base for your GPT or your AI agent. And if you wanted to make it run faster and make it cost less to run, what you can do afterwards is do model fine-tuning. And so model fine-tuning is basically recreating a foundational model off of your knowledge base sources, but doing so in such a way that it's already part of the base knowledge. And so a lot of people have been building enterprise fine-tuning is kind of where they have been going. It's for kind of longer memory of that knowledge. And when you want to train a new model, this is basically making sure that it does specifically what you want it to do. Maybe you train it on all of your Twitter data. Maybe you train it on, having it talk to other GPTs and learn off of other GPTs by asking it to describe its logic behind answers. And then you can kind of recreate models that are much smaller, that have smaller parameters. And so there's a lot of things that are being done on kind of the levels of effectiveness. But in my view, the more expensive it costs to train, the cheaper it is to run overall. So there's probably another layer to this. If you're interested in how to get better at prompting, there's a lot of prompting guides out there, but this one was launched by OpenAI. There's links to the docs. And again, I'll share this whole deck for people and send links to it. In terms of RAG versus fine-tuning, I said it before, but effectively there's short-term memory, which is RAG, right? Your model will read your knowledge source and then do something, versus long-term memory, which is fine-tuning. And you don't have to do this exclusively. You can kind of additively do this together. And so for fine-tuning, what we've seen is that your request can probably have 80% cost savings, but obviously it takes more money to actually do the fine-tuning on the back end versus on kind of the contextual end. And the response times can also be much faster because you've optimized. And so when you look at prompt engineering, fine-tuning, and RAG together, it's all about better outputs. You have easier to work with and more intuitive because you're just kind of sending custom instructions in the beginning. Eventually, you can get into RAG, which is giving it more dynamic knowledge for it to real-time read. There is a limited context window. So RAG, you can't just read everything. It's 200,000 tokens or so. So maybe a few PDFs is the max. And then when you want to do fine tuning, that's kind of more when you want to apply your domain knowledge for your particular industry and then grow that all together. Okay, great. The insights portion took maybe a few minutes longer, but let's go to what I've seen in the past month. So these 9 boxes represent the trends that have been around for the past 6 months or so. So the first one being closed versus open source. There is definitely growth in open source, but most of the open source models are probably the biggest one is like Falcon 700, 700 billion. So those are 700 billion parameters versus the 1.5 trillion in GPT-4. So what we see is more AI models building with fewer parameters. And if you just look at Hugging Face, there's 450,000 like public models that are available. We see a lot more lawsuits and regulations happening, different frameworks for testing. So this is from a few months back, but basically the White House wanted to figure out how much does this particular AI model know and how do we know that? And there's different types of red team testing that can be done. You can have AI bots test other AI bots to make sure that it's not going beyond what it could say. You can try to hack or kind of prompt engineering or prompt hack these particular AI bots. I believe somebody bought a car for $1 because they were talking to an AI bot and they convinced the sales AI bot to sell him a car for $1 by saying it's for his grandmother or something like that. And there's a lot of stories like this. It depends on how well connected this AI bot is, and there's different ways to get around it. There's definitely media impact. I've already seen full-length movies made with AI, and it's only going to get crazier and crazier. Right now, there's a trend of creating on Reddit, people do these, roast me type of post-it notes that say who they are, or hold up a newspaper or things like that. And people are able to build those and make them out of, not real humans. So things are getting pretty crazy. I think there's also image security involved. So there's going to be a lot more misinformation and phishing that's happening this year. There's warnings about, if you receive a phone call from a loved one and it says, oh, well, my phone's dead and I'm calling to pay the tow truck, blah, 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 blah. You should hang up the phone and call the actual number to see what's happening, and or come up with like a secret code between you and your family members so that you ask for the secret code. And so these are other things that you have to think about because, voice mimicking is completely out of control. Like you can pretty much mimic people's voice and do it live and have live conversations with other people's voices quite a bit. And there's also, I can show a demo of this live face transformation. So that's also going to be quite crazy. So it's hard to actually know who's available, who's real, what is real. In terms of gaming, I'm seeing a lot more flexi cubes is a 2D to 3D mesh. So it's effectively a way to create the metaverse without actually doing the hard work of doing it manually. I think the metaverse example is going to be quite interesting. You can have assistants that live in the metaverse. It's like having a Tamagotchi. They can help play games with you and do other things. I'm really looking forward to seeing where Meta goes with their strategy. There's also definitely new terms of service, new integrations that are happening. ChatGPT Enterprise. There's other enterprise agents that are coming this way. I believe Claude has an enterprise now made by Anthropic. There will be more and more GPTs that are being created. Multimodal everything. Right now, if you have an iPhone, you can set the conversation mode for your OpenAI ChatGPT app. So you can just press a button and directly talk to ChatGPT, and it can do audio responses as well. So I know some people who have set that up as a shortcut instead of using Siri, and it's pretty fascinating. You can just kind of press a button and you're talking directly to conversation mode. And also, big companies will continue to be big companies. Existing vendors will take advantage because they already have sold you the application. Maybe they upscale the price. Maybe they just keep you inside of their application. So the big players that we've seen is Google. They came out with Gemini Ultra and Nano. There's some controversy there, but Gemini Ultra is really, really fascinating. Just the ability to look at visuals, to process those visuals. There's also Duet AI, which is directly connecting to the workspace. Bard has been fully integrated. There's Bard extensions. There's advanced Bard assistants now. So imagine Google Assistant, but with access to all of Bard's knowledge, being able to be more relevant to your personal calendar, your personal docs that you've created, your personal everything is on Google anyway. So anything related to that, I think retail and startups are probably at the best to benefit because they have fewer bureaucracy and overhead. So you can pretty much turn on a Google workspace and start some type of AI agent in there. Oh, my Google agent has listened to me. Okay, and for Microsoft, OpenAI, I think the biggest winner, Microsoft, everything that's being created from OpenAI is a cheaper version on Microsoft and likely a cheaper version offered to their, enterprise users. So all the upgrades to the Office suite, all the upgrades to Bing and, Azure, GPT, and different types of Copilot is now available. It's not just GitHub Copilot, I believe it's called Microsoft Copilot. So all of these things have already been launched and will continue to evolve and quickly be integrated into kind of the enterprise workflow. AWS last month launched Amazon Q, which is incredible. If you haven't looked at it, if you're an AWS user, definitely check it out. Amazon Q has a lot of incredible features, not just for querying, for any interaction with AWS services. There will likely also be an Alexa integration that they're thinking about. But the AWS Bedrock series of APIs is something that we use internally within Consensus to connect to Claude 2 for our chatbots. So a lot of really fast moving things. And it's actually all about integration from the Amazon Q side. So you can see the different services that are already hosted and available, and you can start creating some type of triggers off of those services. There's iOS integration. I believe Apple announced some level of an Apple GPT, but they are thinking about how they can work with different news providers and publishers. I believe they're paying like 50 million to different publishers to get access to their data and, to make it more clean and maybe working with, purely open source and purely, publicly available images for training and things like that. So it's coming along quite a bit. And of course, it's Apple, so they're going to do a good job with it. Probably included into their Apple Vision product when that gets launched. And I think a lot can come together. I'm thinking about the usage of the AirPod because most people have an AirPod in their ear and being able to activate that and interact with it that way, or maybe your Apple Watch and things like that. So definitely integration with the operating system overall. And I think Meta, they're leaning into open source is really fascinating. Llama 2 and eventually Llama 3, which might be launched soon. They have Llama Code. They have Emu for image generation. They have Audio Box, which just came out for creating better podcasts and editing audio. They have already launched Meta AI chatbots, which are available on Facebook Messenger as well as on WhatsApp. You can talk with different personas. And I think their open source approach is kind of like a Linux versus Windows approach, right? They're going full on Linux. They're hoping that open source assistance will be a thing that they can launch in different distributions. I think that's really, really fascinating. Yeah, I also think that Skynet was likely open source. So if you look at Hugging Face and what's available and kind of the unhinged versions of LLMs and unhinged versions of generative AI in images or videos, there's so many things that are being picked up. There's obviously the winner of the DVD versus the HD. What was it before Blu-ray? There are competitors for these formats, and obviously the one that fit with porn was the biggest one that won. So there is definitely a lot of weird things happening in the dark web, the dark AI web, so to speak. The things that were launched since the prior presentation that I gave, so all of December, there was this Gemini multimodal conversations. Super cool. If you haven't watched the video, feel free to watch it. But effectively, it's like a fast forwarded version of live viewing. And so I can just play like 2 minutes of it or 1 minute of it. If you haven't seen it yet. So the next slide, I say that these are all
right.
kind of
Testing Gemini.
faked.
Here we go. Tell me what you see.
I see you placing a piece of paper on the table. I see a squiggly line.
What about now?
The contour lines are smooth and flowing, with no sharp angles or jagged edges. It looks like a bird to me.
What if I add this?
The bird is swimming in the water. It has a long neck and beak. It is a duck.
Yes.
A duck is a type of waterfowl in the family Anatidae. Ducks are closely related to geese and swans. The duck appears to be blue. This is not a common color for ducks. However, there are some breeds of blue ducks. These are typically not as common as other duck breeds. It is more common for ducks to be brown, black, or white.
Are you sure?
What the quack? I was just talking about a blue duck, and now you're holding one.
Okay, so this blew my mind when I watched it for multimodal dialogue.
Looks like blue ducks
And
are more common.
effectively what they said afterwards, and people, it was like a big conspiracy, is that it was effectively a lie. It wasn't done in real time. It's a marketing video. There are specific prompts they use for it to respond, and then they did some post-processing audio. It is very impressive, and there is something that does this within ChatGPT. GPT Vision is able to do, there's an API that connects to video. And so video vision is pretty cool because there is a tweet out there with somebody doing the David Attenborough voiceover of kind of what they see in the image. And it does it live. It takes a screenshot. I've seen this for, I believe somebody built it for a game where it's able to view the game and be able to comment on the game itself. And so the theme here is that instead of just doing live transcriptions, right, instead of just transcribing live like you had with somebody doing it or kind of this voice, you kind of have live commentary. So being able to look at the things that are happening in a particular clip and be able to recommend what's happening next or provide kind of output of what's happening next. There's also something scary that's happening. This is a 22-minute video that is effectively all AI generated. It has a number of really creepy things, not saying that this is something that I endorse, but effectively they can run this live. It's supposed to be a 24/7 channel where you can watch the news that comes for your personal view of the world. And it could be, you know, a single channel, or it could be somebody that you know that's talking to you about the news that it reads. So it could connect to your RSS feed, for example. And I think that's kind of scary. There is bias there. But imagine if everything that you look at on your phone is actually presented back to you in the same style of a live avatar with some clips from those different articles, which could be pretty cool. Midjourney V6 came out on the 21st of December. There were some overhauls. It's actually quite cool. I enjoy it. These are all for me. I built these off of V6 and had some fun with existing paintings. And, you know, you can see how it looks, and it's pretty easy to do for those who haven't dipped their toe into image generation. It's actually quite fun. as long as you label that you've created this off of images. So yeah, these are all generations that I've done. And different prompts that I made was just Mona Lisa as a modern woman, realistic, green eyes, things like that. And so you can create these quite quickly, quite easily. I like the Sure, we can talk about that next, Eric. Okay. Next, there's also Where's Waldo creation. There was a tweet about this, and the way that they did it was to imagine with reference images. And so these are different reference images. And I also, these are from actual Where's Waldo books, and you can actually create your own Where's Waldo and then kind of add in your own Where's Waldo afterwards. I don't think it actually creates Waldo, which could be a problem. But you can always upscale and then use Photoshop to edit some things out. But it's, again, pretty impressive. You can make it in any location and it's available. In terms of regulation, there was a lawsuit. If you look at the full lawsuit, it says that there's full copying and nature of different things that were written. I've heard different parties look at, Magnific. I have Topaz.ai, but Magnific just did a lot of advertising recently, so I have looked at it as well. Okay, so this is real-time AI interface, which kind of blew my mind. It's called FAL.ai. And I think I'm using my camera right now, so it might not work, but let's see if I can do it live, reload the page. And basically, this is going to be me with George Clooney's face. I think I can turn on my video. Where's my video? Maybe if I turn off my video here and turn on my video here. Reload. Does it work? Aha, there's me. And then this is George Clooney live. And there I am. Look, live George Clooney. Which is pretty crazy, right? And this is all just kind of web hosted. Probably killing my memory. But you can type in any actor. I did one of Keanu Reeves. And there's the Keanu Reeves version of me. How crazy is that? Yeah. And then imagine that with, oh man, so many crazy things that can happen. Okay, turn on. Yeah, so Keanu version of myself. And GPT Store is going to be launched hopefully this week, or maybe it has launched while I'm talking about this. The thing to note is to think about the policies. So some things is you can't use another organization's trademark, so you can't actually label it as a YouTube summarizer or Facebook ad optimizer. All of those are out of the way. You can kind of breach their policies. So read through this if you are creating GPTs, and I have been, and made sure that they're public and available and that they can be crawled and reviewed. Okay, in terms of 2024 predictions, I have 10 minutes left. Open source models are catching up. So Llama 3, I think, is going to be a huge one. OpenAI disruption for added capabilities. So GPT-5, which is advanced capabilities, is probably not necessary if you have a lot of GPTs in their GPT store. So again, the distribution and the network effect of having hosted GPTs that you can access and reference, I think is really, really interesting. Changes developer experience, changes a lot of things. There will be a lot of video explosion because you just saw that there was live generation of video. We can all become directors at some point. I mean, the image to video creation that we have today is already pretty impressive. I've been playing around with Runway ML, and just for one of them that I created was just to take a regular image, generate the video. So the asset that I created here was a video of this created image of kind of like a Christmas scene, and then I just highlighted certain areas with like some direction, and it's able to, create this image. So if you look at things, and I could probably generate with Mubert some music, like soothing music, and then I can post it online and have, some crazy looped music video with flickering lights and moving things. Like this could change the way we look at different types of Airbnbs that we stay at. Maybe you want to animate your Airbnb images into GIFs or something. Okay, and other things is Gemini Ultra is bound to come out. There's already talks about it being integrated with the Pixel 8 and the Pixel 8 Pro that's available. I think it's a big pro for getting a Pixel phone or a Google-based phone because it could be fully integrated much faster in terms of kind of advanced BARD and all these things that are launching. Could be very expensive, but it could be also part of their subscription model. I believe they were providing Gemini Ultra for kind of like Google One subscriptions, those who are paying for more space. And you can also imagine this Gemini Nano, which is a smaller version of Gemini Ultra that lives on your device itself. And so I think that's going to be something that you can pull up on your device and be able to answer questions without any type of connection to the internet. Voice Assistance Plus is a big one. So roll out to the existing hardware that you have, Siri, Bard, Alexa, all making moves there. I think metaverse assistants in Quest 3 are going to be super fun. If you can have somebody to talk to, then there's more of a reason to put on your headset and to play video games, to explore different worlds with like a partner of some sort. On-device LLMs, and then you have more enterprise deployments and more ops usage. So just a few slides that kind of highlight this. Open source has caught up with private models, but pretty slowly, but at an accelerated pace. So if you look at early days of GPT-2, right, nothing is available there. Even with GPT-3 that was available, nothing. And then by mid-2022, end of 2022, you have kind of the first models that are open source. Llama, 65 billion parameters came out and around March. And now you have going up to Grok from X.AI, which is more performant, launching at the end of that time. There is a Chinese based company that's come out with Yi 34 billion. Mixtral is a big one that you can run locally. Falcon 180, Falcon 800. These are all different models that are available for people to use. And the ones that are really fascinating, you see GPT-4, GPT-5 under private could be huge. Gemini Ultra is going to be a large one. And these are all kind of absolute performances. So who knows what that means? There's different tests for that, but feel free to see what type of large language model fits for you. In terms of open source models, for me, this is fascinating. If you go to Hugging Face and you just look at their models, there's 450,000 models that are available. Tiny Llama, Mistral AI, Microsoft V2 is another big one that just came out. I mean, there's so much happening. Every month is really just happening so quickly. I just looked at Jan.ai, which is a local run open source. It's basically a LLM that you can install fully locally, and it only takes around 20 gigabytes. And you don't need like a special processor. It can run. It's kind of like thinking about running a full node for a Linux developer or for within your Ethereum interface versus connecting to a Web3 gateway. We have all these gateways that are running the LLMs on our behalf, but you can also run it fully locally. And Jan.ai is something that I've looked at. I ran it on my separate computer, and it's surprisingly good. It doesn't do what GPT-4 does, but it does what GPT 3.5, the free version, does. In terms of AI-enabled phones, I had this slide last month, or probably for the past 3 months, and you see Humane.ai came out with their Humane pin, and Gemini Nano coming out. So we're going closer and closer to rethinking about the interface. And so with Rabbit Tech launching theirs, it kind of looks like this actually, and thinking about the movie Her, right, having the phone with the voice chat interfaces. I think the future is also personalized media in many ways, which is not great because you just get caught into the funnel, the echo chamber that you've created for yourself. But I can imagine an AI filtered or spoken news coming from your X feed, your public news feed, your custom RSS feed, your personal tasks, your NPR podcasts, all of these coming together and being a customized AI YouTube channel just for you. You can keep yourself updated. You can have your personal newscaster. You can change out different newscasters. You can remove duplicate articles that you might have read or indicate which articles are more frequent so that you can put more emphasis on them. It can cross-reference different types of parties. And this is the last slide that I wanted to share. I didn't mention it this particular round, but in the past 2 or 3 different monthly updates, there was a project called chatdev.ai. And effectively what they did was use something like AutoGen, which is you create a simulation and you have a conversation between AI agents playing different roles. And so your AI game simulation is given a goal to solve a problem. Imagine it's a company to build a video game. You spawn these AI agents internally, and they all come up with their deliverables and they talk to each other. And so the paper describes how they did it. It ran the simulation for 7 minutes, built a game for $1, and it wasn't just copying code from somebody else. It kind of like went through iterations and documented the whole thing. And so if you think about what this looks like, everything is a simulation in this, and you can imagine an AI game simulation creating subset simulations and running those. And so we could be living in a simulation of just a bigger simulation running it, and it can be simulations all the way down. So that's what I've been thinking about, and taking cold showers. So the last slide I have here, sorry, I thought that was my last slide. This is something I went through last month, but post-labor economics means what if all of our knowledge work was fully automated? There's obviously benefits to AI. You have productivity surging, you have creative innovation, you have scaled problem solving, different types of educational handholding. In the short term, there's high risk to higher wage jobs. Again, this deflationary pressure because the checks are being written are much smaller, and then also you can do a lot more with a lot less. There might be impact to freelancers, there could be accelerated research, there could be regulatory oversight, and then eventually there is price collapse, right? If labor cost is completely removed, maybe there's a flip between white collar and blue collar altogether. If you're into construction, that's probably a good thing because whatever you're building physically will likely not be replaced. Although I just saw Mobile Aloha is a robot interface where it can cook a 3-course Chinese dinner, which is kind of cool, but not as good as real chefs, obviously. But it could be like a good sous chef. It can chop up different things at different different sizes. Anyway, there could be economies of scale and marginal cost reduction. Maybe scarcity economics comes into play, but this wouldn't happen for another decade, 2 decades, maybe within our lifetime. Who knows? But something to definitely think about is how do you fit into post-labor economics? And that's how I want to end the conversation. I will continue to think about more next month. And Clembot can give a presentation. I have used HeyGen to create a version of myself to present. And I'm also happy to answer any questions. Feel free to type them in the chat. I'll scroll back to see if I've missed anything. And again, I'll share the recording. It was Clembot all along. I just take off like the Scooby-Doo face. Any specific, oh, this is the thread for the Where's Waldo and how it was made, which I think is pretty impressive, the amount of work they did. Looks pretty good. And if you missed any of the recordings, all the recordings here. Do we have any AI assistance for querying our own data? So yes, we do, but are we allowed to do it? So the main thing about the policy is we're not allowed to share confidential data. I imagine if we internally use like Looker for our dashboards, that Looker will come up with ways to query it a little bit better. But again, I mean, people are actively working on maintaining these dashboards and building versions of it. AI may not do a better job. It may provide different insights, and maybe there's an overlay of that data afterwards. But yeah, in terms of SEO, you can definitely guarantee that there will be different companies that build out the AI features that you're looking for. And those will be launched for extra fees or reasons for it to not be disrupted by kind of smaller companies. Is there anything we should keep in mind when using Midjourney for article images? So I have used ChatGPT to write a lot of my blog posts. In fact, the list of 30 writer itself has steps that helps me with creating the let me copy the link for people who are interested. For your own purposes, the things that you're doing personally, you can upload different types of files. In one of my previous ones, you can use Kaggle.com to download data. Happy to give a deep dive on this, but Kaggle is basically open source data that's available, that data sets, and you can actually upload these as CSV files to Code Interpreter. So let's say we just live demo, we're running over time, but that's okay. Let's say this is like most streamed Spotify songs. Let's download this. I'm registered with that. Let's say I download the most streamed Spotify songs and I create my chat GPT over here and I extract it. More than a little terrifying. Yeah. So in terms of kind of prompting, Eric, the idea is that you can have it write with you and then ask ChatGPT to generate the image altogether. I want to see these Spotify songs happen. Sorry, let me just do it manually extract. Oh, that's why. And so your Spotify CSV, so you can even do it in saying, what is this? Can you provide me with a series of interesting charts? Yes, proceed. So this is code interpreter portion, which is if you show it is writing Python code using different libraries to open up the CSV file, to parse it, to read it. And then due to encoding issues, live demos are terrible. Yeah, so in terms of AI generated content, there is something called paragraph.io. Paraphrase. Paraphrase.io. Uh, Paraphraser. And you can copy your AI generated input here and it will paraphrase the text and convert it with different characters. Or it wasn't paraphraser, it was like, I thought it was like there are ways that you can convert AI generated text back to AI generated text with passing of the regular AI checks. You know what I can do is on the next session, I'll go through this Kaggle thing again. I don't know why it's running into errors, but usually what you can say is, can you provide me with a series of interesting charts off of the data that was read? And it'll generate that. I forgot the name of the paraphrasing tool, or it was Paragraph AI. Anyway, feel free to reach out to me on the Slack channel or, oh, this is it, Paragraph AI. It's not it. This is not what I remember. Unless they've changed. Okay, this will be recorded. Oh, Coolbot, is it? Amal? Okay. Any other questions? Examples of projects that mix Web3 and AI, instance of DAO where proposals are all AI generated. Yeah, I haven't seen DAOs embrace this all the way, but you can definitely write like a DAO proposal, chat GPT. So if you go to the GPT prompt perfecter that I have, when to write a GPT that helps me with DAO proposals. And then the refined prompt that I would paste into a new GPT would be this with some variation of this. Ask the user for a specific DAO. Maybe I already defined the DAO. Proposal templates, so recommend different proposal templates, and then it'll generate something off of compliance checker. Yeah, so you can copy and paste this into your new GPT, and then you can spawn a early version of it. Okay, I believe we've gone over a little bit, and happy to continue the conversation next month. Feel free to ping me, and thanks so much for tuning in. Take care, everyone.